this is a synthesizer that one of our industrial designers made. On Thursday, we got together, 30 of us, and we made fictional toys. The one on the left is Whisker Cheeks, and the one on the right is Sir Tuscalot. On another Thursday, we got together, and we made things out of potatoes. The secret is you can't buy this radio because there's only one. Kids might like Sir Tusculus, but who cares? And even though we're in Brooklyn, I don't think you'll see much potato jewelry anytime soon. So I'm in a place in my career where I've realized that it's not what you make or how you make or when you make or where you make. It's just the act of being creative that matters. I think that this poem sums it up really well. So what I'm here to talk about today are the little projects, the things that happen between the margins, the things that happen between the big projects, and the importance that those things have on staying inspired and being creative. My story begins in 2007. Okay, so 2007, Open Frameworks, processing, Arduino, they're just coming out. The iPhone launched, it's huge. The industry's changing. I'm at Arnold, I've been there for 2 years. I'm finally a professional designer. This is awesome. And what I do is I make web banners. That's what you do, right, as a professional designer. So I was there, I was in my interior office, and I was trying to reinvent the mouse click. While my friend is at Parsons in Zach Lieberman's program in design and technology, making things like this. He was making musical water fountains, drawing machines. He was combining software and hardware to make new interactions. And at the same time, being in advertising, you keep a close eye on things. You started to see these things in consumer electronics, trade shows, retail spaces, hardware coming into physical space, software being a component that was never there before. And I'm here, still here. So something had to give, right? So I went down to Parsons from Boston. I met with Todd to see what the hell was going on there because, I mean, they were doing something completely different, and we were just super interested in it. We took some pictures, and I came back to Boston, and with his help and another colleague, Meg Siegel, we put together a proposal for a place that looked like this, right? Workbenches, power tools, electronics. And this quote this is actually a page directly from that proposal. And this quote, it kind of makes me laugh. I just opened this up a couple days ago, and it starts with, "We need to be able to hang things." It must have been pretty bad if we weren't allowed to hang things. But you get the point. We were trying to do something different. This didn't exist. I couldn't solder at the agency, and I couldn't do anything like that. And I wanted to be able to do that. Luckily, Pete Favat, the chief creative officer, the top dog, he's like a closet maker. The guy goes home to his wood shop and he makes things. And then he comes into work and he works on the big stuff, you know, and he makes calls. So the guy totally dug it. He was like, let's do it, let's start it. Let's call it Arnold R&D, and we'll put it right in the center of the agency. All right, cool, I'm in. We hired Todd, he came up. This is Todd on the left, this is Pete. And that structure behind us is what eventually became the R&D lab. When we finally opened doors and Todd started, Pete brought in the sign that's on the wall there, and he had made it a couple of years back, and he said, boys, this is the only rule here. He was like a baseball coach, I guess. This is the only rule. If you find yourself not doing this someday, you're fired. Okay, I'll do that. So that's what we did, right? We played. I mean, we messed around. I was 23, Todd was 21, and we were just making things. We were combining our skill sets. I was a graphic designer at the time. I very quickly became an interaction designer, and he was something new. And today has become the creative technologist. So we made, we try to make something new every day. I mean, that became tough, but that was the spirit that we operated with. So the lab itself was placed directly in the center of the agency, where people pass by, excuse me, pass by every day. So it was placed in a way that people, and we were told to work in the open. I heard that earlier, and that's actually a big component of what IDEO tells us to do too. Work out in the open, show people what it is that you're doing, because that's how you educate them on what's possible, right? So this is a piece that we put in the lobby at Arnold really early on. So it was a 12-foot projection in the center of the agency, and it was branded Arnold. Arnold at the time was using Polaroids as their thing. So we basically took a prototype that we made at the R&D lab. It was a simple face tracking application that put things on your face, and we branded it. So it was basically our advertisement inside of the agency. It was the kind of thing where people would walk by and be like, "Wait, we made that? Who made that? We can make that? Can we put a logo up there? I guess you could, but like that's not what this is all about. This isn't about like making your logo dance or like making it spin around with motion. This is about storytelling. It's about branded experiences." So eventually, we ran the gamut on Arnold's clients. We did pretty much something for everybody. It was kind of awesome. It was a 3-year stint, and we did the best we could. We hit a lot of the challenges that you heard earlier on the panel, and the process was never really streamlined. It was us making prototypes, educating the brand teams, wrapping those things in a story, and then trying to sell them. It worked. We had a lot of challenges with production, but toward the end, where a lot of the bigger projects up here, like the Carnival project, came from. Lost it. There it goes. Oh, let's watch this again. Sorry about that. Toward the end, I was working with a guy named Teddy Lin. Teddy Lin was he was a Hollywood movie producer. He produced big movies, like Pleasantville was one of the movies he produced. He was the kind of guy, I heard this earlier too, that if you needed a penguin, he'd get it. And if you needed an elephant, he'd get that too. And if you wanted to hang something crazy over the ceiling, he'd figure out how to do that. And he was able to help us scale these things to a point where we were profitable. And one day, Teddy came into the lab and he gave me a book. And it's funny because we're totally different people. Teddy speed reads and I don't read. So this is the book he gave me. It's called The 10 Faces of Innovation. And in the book, it outlines the 10 personas that should be in the room someone says should be in the room to push design to the next level. In the same breath that Teddy gave me this book, he also told me that he was going to be leaving Arnold. And he was moving on to Universal McCann. Okay. So it just so happens that IDEO published that book, and it was written by one of their founders, Tom Kelly. And so when Teddy moved on, I moved on. It was kind of a natural evolution. It was a really easy transition because IDEO wears the same 3D glasses that we wear at the R&D lab. The only difference was there were 500 of them, not 3, and their skill sets they're completely different. I remember my first couple days there, and it went something like this. It was like, "Hey, my name's Ryan," and then, "Oh, hey, my name's David. I used to work at NASA as an aerospace engineer." Or like, hey, I'm Greg. I used to work at Boeing stress testing airplane wings. And I ran into people like Tim, he's a biologist, and Jane, who's a sociologist. And it was like, what the hell am I doing here? What did I do to myself? I left a place, and now I'm here. But you know, you do what any professional does. You go back to your desk and you make believe you know exactly what you're doing. So now, you quickly realize, well, I quickly realized that IDEO is like the CIA of design. Everybody that works there is a special agent, and all the work we do is highly confidential. It's actually really shocking coming from advertising, because the sole purpose of advertising is to tell as many people as possible. So what I'm going to tell you about today about IDEO is not the client work, but the unique things that I've found about IDEO as it pertains to the culture, the people, and the methodologies. So the story goes on. I'm in the cafe, and it's part of the IDEO culture to share your project work. That's just what you do. It's kind of like what sparks the conversation. And those conversations eventually lead into the things that people are doing to get inspired to do the client work. Okay. I remember hearing things like woodworking, fabricating, filming, fixing, sewing, painting, gardening, cooking, and printing. When you have this many people doing this many things, you eventually end up getting some of this, some combining. This is a newer thing that I pulled that just happened a couple weeks ago. This is an instance where 4 people at the Boston office got together: an economist, a life scientist, a product designer, and a biologist. And they made a circuit that passes through bacteria. It's kind of like a bacterial conductor. It's kind of amazing. It's actually a little bit like what Todd was doing at Parsons. He was combining hardware and software, but this is different. And you know what? I have no idea what this is valuable, where the value is in this, but it's going to be really cool to see it kind of pan out. It's at a gallery show in Amsterdam right now. So, I don't know. You got to start to think, like, what is it? Like, how is this happening? How are all the people in this community not just doing the client work, they're also maintaining these other things outside of it? It's because that is the culture. It's built in. It's not expected. They want it. You know, they want to be doing these things because these are the kind of things that keep you inspired. This is another way that the design studio in Boston gets together, and basically we make together on Thursdays. I mentioned it earlier. We get together. We get a limited set of materials and a fictional design brief, and we switch who makes the brief and what materials we get. And this is. Here are some of the things that we made in that. Snacks of the future, toy mashups, imaginary cities, dream catchers from another land, new materials and their properties, pull tab postings. The one on the left was in the bathroom for a really long time. This was actually one of my favorites. So I read this poem to you. Well, you read this poem earlier, and it's actually a poem that I wrote with a couple of my colleagues, Todd being one of them from the R&D lab at Arnold. When we arrived at IDEO, we realized this underground scene of creativity that was happening. So Todd and I sat down a couple hours and we just hashed out a really quick platform for people to capture these moments and share them with the rest of the community. It's super rudimentary, but the basics are, it's an email address, you take a picture, you send it, it gets tied to your email, and it gets put into this website. It's called Made by Us. It's actually a public website. It's not the best UI I've ever designed, but you know what? It serves its purpose. So it's a pretty cool thing. It's actually spread beyond Boston, and up top left here, you got a sack of potatoes that was grown in the rooftop garden in Chicago, and the right is probably something that was made on one of those Thursday lunch activities. It looks like somebody took a flame to some of the utensils. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is it's basically creative calisthenics. It's the idea of always being creative. Whenever you can, carve out some time, and just do something cool because that's what keeps your brain engaged, basically. It's what allows you to look at big challenges and be like, oh yeah, we can fix that. It's creative competency in a sense. So you're probably wondering, like, how on earth is IDEO making any money? They're making weird things and their designers are spending lunch, doing nothing. So I'm going to try and tell you a little story about how the practice of doing these kinds of creative activities can actually come into play. And this is a very literal form. There are other less literal forms. So it's about this time last year. I'm on a project working for a major auto manufacturer. It's based in Japan. We have a really short deadline to deliver a driving simulator for the Detroit Auto Show. And in the project timeline, there's a week of time spent in Japan meeting the corporate executives. And I remember somebody on the team telling me, in Japan, it's really important that you always have your business cards on you and you always have a business card holder. Okay, I didn't have a business card holder. So right before we left for Japan, I had been toying with leather and like trying to learn its capabilities and learn the limited tool set that I had available at the shop at IDEO. And so I decided during the long client meetings on the phone, I would fold paper and figure out how I was going to store my business cards in Japan. So this is what I ended up with. I've actually got it here in my pocket. I still carry it around. It's a simple design. It's just one piece of leather with a stitch up the side. But I learned the basics. I hand stitched this thing, and I learned how to dye it. I learned how to make it soft. It was a lot of fun, right? This is the kind of thing that could be looked at as either a waste of time or like not focusing in the right place at the right time. I could have been thinking about what I was going to say to these business executives when I got to Japan, but I told them about my wallet. Actually, that's what I told them about. So now here we go. Fast forward a couple months. We're at the Detroit Auto Show. The Detroit Auto Show is totally crazy. Pre-show, they basically build like a full city in that place. And we showed up there like 2 days before the show, and we installed our piece. And it was kind of a running joke between the whole team that the way that this project was structured was like an explosion in reverse. We had parts being made all over the country, and they were all going to come together at the Detroit Auto Show. And this totally freaked our client out, but you know what? It's part of the process. If you want to, if you know, it's going to be okay, and it's part of what we take our clients through. That there will be stressful times, but we'll deliver in the end. So the most important part of the simulator was made. It was made in Michigan, but it wasn't going to be finished until the day before the show. And our clients stressed really hard on us that the steering wheel is the most important part of the simulator, because that's what people touch, and that's the feeling they get. It needs to feel real, or the whole thing's going to feel fake. And the client team, the IDEO team again, we talked about it, and we were like, man, that steering wheel is going to be plastic, and it's not going to feel real. Like, what are we? And it's going to show up at the show. We don't have any time to do anything to it. It's just going to come. We're going to install it. So one of the guys is like, hey, you've been working with leather. I saw you do it. You're going to stitch a leather wrap around this steering wheel, and you're going to make it look good. And I was like, okay, I guess this is the moment I've been prepping for. So needless to say, that steering wheel showed up at the Detroit Auto Show. I brought my leather kit, and I watched a couple YouTube videos and just went for it. I had built up this confidence that, you know what, I can do this. I already did it. This is just another wallet. There's just a steering wheel inside of it. It's cool. So, so yeah, hey, it went on without a hitch. This is us installing it into the simulator super late at night, the day before the auto show opened. So, this isn't like crazy innovation, right? This is something different. This is the practice of being creative. It's letting the small projects inform the big ones. And it's thinking about creativity as a reflex, something that needs to be conditioned. It's just like dancing or a foreign language. Like, you can't just flip it on and off. And you shouldn't have to go to a special room to do it. You should be able to just dance, So if you practice, this kind of activity, this kind of like, this creativity will it should feel natural and come organically in your day-to-day. So, I mean, I can only imagine that our jobs are all different, and the constraints exist, and there are probably conventions that I'm unaware of. But what I illustrated today is only one way of breaking a very small set of those conventions, I'm sure. But I challenge you guys to go and try this out. Carve out some time and invite some people to play, and try to make sure that those people play differently than you, because you'll eventually, combine and make something new. So I think I'll leave it there, and that's it. Thanks. So if you have any questions, happy to answer. Do my best. So when Todd and I transitioned to IDEO, he asked what's happening with the R&D lab now. I heard a term earlier called backfilling. I think we did that. We hired two guys, super talented, to take the R&D lab down another road. It still exists, and they've got a page on Arnold's website, and they've got some projects up there.
Hey, are you guys doing any products or brands or technologies on your own, not client work, and trying to put them in the market?
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, some of these, the making in the margins turns into something a little bit more real. IDEO and the employees there have, there are numerous ways that IDEO supports the growth of these projects. There's one project that just came out of IDEO Chicago called Eastern Standard Time, and it was a Kickstarter program, and they do the thinnest watch in the world. It's a pretty cool one. And there was another one out in the Bay that recently launched called Faraday Bikes, and they they make an electric bicycle that's super beautiful. I know that IDEO is involved in those things in certain ways, but I think that's kind of up to the team that creates it to negotiate with how it grows, you know?
Hey, thanks for your time. I appreciate that, and it's been really cool to hear you talk about how IDEO works with a lot of this. Sitting in a room full of like a lot of creative technology folks, I'm intrigued about like how do you find which projects you want to execute on? Because we're in a room with people who come up with 1,000,001 ideas regularly about crazy, you know, wonky inventions or things that we could do. How do you pick which ones do you kind of go towards, and how many half-baked projects do you have sitting around that just, you know, get hung up?
Oh man, that's a whole nother talk about the projects I have sitting around. Gosh, you know, it's a balance. I think it's a balance of what's where that like edge is. You know, that you want to explore the new things that are coming out, but it's also, I mean, it's follow your heart, right? It's all passion. It's based on like you wanting to do this. That's the key. Is like if you want to do it, you're gonna excel, right? If you don't want to do it, if someone's telling you to do it, or you think you should do it for some reason other than it being your passion, like I would have trouble finishing, I guess, you know. I do have a couple projects that I have laying around that, I mean, Made by Us is probably one of them, you know. I took it to a point, and then it did what I wanted it to do, and now it just stays, it sort of has become stagnant. So, you know, it's a matter of, I think, like catching a wave or not, you know. Like if you can make it and people really dig it, and you're still digging it, you should just keep pushing it, because that's what it's all about, you know. Cool. All right, well, thanks so much.